A very, very warm welcome. Good afternoon to everyone. This is Shravan Charya inviting all the panelists and the participants to Global Compact Network India's first webinar on a very, very important theme today. Leadership in the face of adversity, challenges for business continuity. As we all know, we are at the, I would say we are at an epoch moment of times when we are seeing an unprecedented challenge that challenges all of our economic systems, coexistence, the entire human evolutionary dynamics are at a very interesting juncture of history. And in that, with that being said, we welcome everybody to GCNI Sustainiverse Platform's first webinar on this topic of leadership in the face of adversity. I'd like to have Kamal Singh, the CEO of GCNI, the Global Compact Network India, to give us a brief introductory note of this webinar. And then I would momentarily introduce all the panelists, the August panelists who have joined us for this webinar today. Over to you, Kamal Singh ji.
First of all, who had agreed to lead this webinar and who is also our anchor for this webinar. And all our distinguished panelists, Mr. Rajiv Dubey, Ms. Madhulika Sarma, Mr. Prasad Pradhan, and Ms. Roma Balwani. And of course, to all of our distinguished participants from around the world. And Naseem just confirms me there are over 600 participants that today just signed up. And it is not from only India, it is all over the world. We are really delighted to see such a huge response at this point of crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, we are getting into a substantial shift in all aspects of our lives, personal, professional, social. A new normal is slowly but surely evolving that we all must adapt as early as possible. I really feel privileged to present to you our first ever webinar during that crisis itself, that is COVID-19, with such a distinguished and celebrated thought leaders and most amazing attendees. Today, all of you know the world faces a pandemic of unprecedented proportions, which has brought life globally to a standstill. The UN Global Compact globally and the Global Compact Network in India are calling all businesses to unite for fighting COVID-19 to ensure that the most vulnerable population are protected from this pandemic. Therefore, there is an active need now, more than ever, to adopt the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and the Global Compact's 10 universal principles of sustainability by companies and organizations to fight the situation of a global lockdown. Our eminent panelists, I'm really personally grateful to each one of them. I know what it means to them. They are the business leaders who are really proven practitioners of sustainability, representing company who's who, which are taking also multiple steps to battle the COVID-19 situation. We look forward to a thoughtful and thought-provoking and outcome-driven discussion today. I'm happy learning for one and all. And before I hand over to Sarban, I must say I'm really thrilled with such a power-packed attendees and also equally our panelists. And I'm particularly confident that this next 90 minutes are going to be full of learnings and also understanding and sharing a lot of insight and thought leadership together. So with that note, I will hand over to Sarban. Sarban, really thank you from our core of heart for coming on board in a very quick time to put up this technology, and your thought leadership, your team have done very well. And with that note, I will hand over to Sarban.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Kamal Singh, for that nice introduction. And I think setting the context really, is very important for this webinar. We know that there's been a lot of webinars and a lot of seminars all around us in terms of how is business responding to this, the challenge of COVID-19, and I think what is really the need of the hour is for us to set the context, and I think the context is in relation to the overall 10 broad principles that are already established by the United Nations, and for which each and every country is a signatory. And it is also very important for us to drive the context from specific SDGs and how these SDGs would, like the Sustainable Development Goals, would help accelerate the response of business leaders. And in that relation, I'd like to set the context for this webinar and also briefly touch upon the sub-tracks that we will be talking about. The first track is really about how do we balance people and profits. I think this is a quintessential question that every business is answering today. And it's not just a textbook question that needs to be answered from a theoretical perspective, but each and every business needs to have a practical, ethical, and more than ethical, a very pragmatic response, because balancing profits and people at the time of a crisis of this nature, which is basically challenging the fundamentals of economics, is a very crucial aspect. So that's track one. And we will have Mr. Rajiv Dubey, who is advisor to the Mahindra & Mahindra group of companies, talking about it. The next track is about the response of organization to the needs of the community. And now I think, all organizations have come, have evolved from, profits to people to sustainability to CSR to, both from a CSR perspective and really from a people practices perspective. How can they be agile in responding to the community? And we have Mr. Prasad Pradhan. And I will be momentarily introducing each one of our distinguished panelists to you. So that's track number 2. How would organizations respond to the needs of the community? And how would they collaborate with the government? And I think Prasad Pradhan gives us a lot of interesting perspectives from his company. The third track is solutions for business continuity. Look, business continuity has always been, one department or a function in each and every organization. Also, the perception of BCP was always that, look, if power goes down in a building, if there's a power outage, then what will happen? Where are people going to work from? Or if there is, a situation such as an earthquake in one city, then what happens? Where can they work from? But now this pandemic has completely changed the goalpost of the meaning of BCP, business continuity. And I think it's a fantastic opportunity for BCP professionals and also organizations to articulate the right response. That's track number 3. What are the challenges and solutions for business continuity? And also a programmatic CSR response is the need of the hour. And we have Madhulika Sharma from Tata Steel, who would kind of articulate a few examples how Tata Steel has actually approached this, and also how did they come up with a programmatic CSR response. And the last track would be increasing the role of technology for all. Now, everything's moved to technology. So when we say technology, I would say it's more of communication technology coming to the foray, and it's not technology in its real name and meaning. So what are the challenges and solutions around technology, the agility? Now, most of the webinar softwares have already seen a spike in the number of webinars and online conferences that are happening. Now, how many more spikes can it take, for example? And what is the need of sustaining, a solution that would, provide for very effective communication, which is our final track, which is, going to be which is going to be explained by Roma Balwani ji. So that being said, finally, we're going to have an interesting discussion, basis which we will be very happy to answer questions from the audience. And these question and answers would not just basically be on a Q&A format, but also would be on a lively conversation between the panelists to ensure that we get the, the net essence of how can business respond to a pandemic of this nature and this scale. Without much ado, let me just go over to introducing you to the panelists today. I would want this to be different from the usual moderator giving an introduction. I would want the panelists to quickly introduce themselves in the perspective of the rich experience, and I'll start with Mr. Rajiv Dubey. Over to you, Mr. Rajiv.
Yeah, good evening and welcome. My name is Rajiv Dubey. After 45 years of corporate slavery, I retired on the 1st of April as a group president and CEO of one of the businesses in the Mahindra Group and a member of the group executive board. I am an economist by education with an MBA degree thrown in for good. I started working in 1975 when I joined something called the TAS, which is the Central Managerial Cadre of the Tata Group. I worked for 29 years with the Tatas, of which 21 years were with Tata Steel, and the next 7 years as the managing director first of Tata Metallics and then of Rallis India. I came to Mahindra in 2004, and I have since then been looking after some functions at the group level, noticeably HR, and also a business. So that's my relevant introduction. One more piece of information. I'm a member of the governing body of the International Labour Organization, and I think that would be a little relevant in today's conversation. So thank you very much for giving me the honor of being with you this evening.
It's indeed a great honor to have you today, Rajiv ji, in this webinar, and we hope to hear some great insights from you. I'd move on to Mr. Prasad Pradhan from Hindustan Unilever, and over to you, sir.
Hi everyone, I'm Prasad Pradhan and I've been with Hindustan Unilever since 1995. I'm Director for Corporate Communications and Sustainable Business for South Asia. I've handled different areas of corporate communications, corporate affairs and sustainability during this period. And before joining Hindustan Unilever, I worked with Hindustan Petroleum. And I'm a former cricketer, so I used to play for Maharashtra in Ranji Trophy. That's me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prasad. It's very nice to think of cricket during the times of the pandemic. I feel like right now going into the closest cricket ground and assembling all my college friends to play a game of cricket. But by the way, let me move on to Madhulika Sharma. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Madhulika Sharma, and good to hear that my number of experience falls short of the previous two panelists, because otherwise, when I'm speaking, I'm quite, concerned about actually sharing my number of years of experience, because if there are young, people sitting across you, they give you quite a dirty look, because I have over 27 years of experience and all of it in one company, Tata Steel. However, I have worked through function. A big company like Tata Steel allows you to work in various functions, and these functions in itself are actually like a company. So I started as an IT professional and worked for 10 years. Then I moved to a more corporate role as an executive assistant and then executive officer to our earlier managing director. Then I moved to actually a line function inside the steel plant. And then now I am in this role as Chief of Corporate Sustainability for more than 4 years now. I have had some, why I was chosen for this role, probably because I had some background on doing some work, because I have been assessing, I've been a CII assessor on their sustainability assessment process for a long time. And I landed up here, and I think this role is far more challenging, especially if you're working in a hard to abate sector like steel, and it requires a lot of working with so many stakeholders, both internal and external, and bringing them on board to actually mainstream many things which needs to be done. So that is for my introduction, and thanks, Shravan, for
thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Madhulika. So we have a Tata Steel veteran here. Warm welcome to you. Over to Roma Balwani. Please go ahead and introduce yourself. And I'm going to give you 15 seconds. You're a comms expert. So let's see what comes in 15 seconds from you.
So good evening, everybody. And thank you, GCNI, for allowing me to be here as a panelist. It's a little daunting because I have my former boss, Rajiv Dubey, here too. And we have worked very closely for almost a decade together, and also previously in Tata's, where he did give me an opportunity to work in Calcutta. So I owe a lot to my former boss, and I'm so happy to be here along with him. At Vedanta, I'm right now the brand and communications head as the director, and been with them in two roles. Took a short break, came back last April. But before that, I was their president for communications, sustainability, and CSR. And prior to that, as I mentioned, at the Mahindra Group, where I was empowered by Rajiv Dubey and the organization to lead communications. Before that, with an IT company called Aptech and a manufacturing company, which is well known, Lasna & Chubro. So that's a quick one on me.
Thank you so much, Roma. I think that was slightly over 20 seconds, but thank you so very much. And it's a delight to have a comms specialist and with vast experience. Also, just to quickly introduce about myself, I've been more of kind of a person from a supply chain background, 20 years experience, probably the youngest in the lot today in this meeting, I would think, or the webinar. Worked in different parts, started with Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, ran supply chain for them in the Far East, then moved into consulting in Accenture, and then over to heading IT, a division of Microsoft in Seattle, for example, which, you know, purportedly is the worst affected in the pandemic crisis right now, the West Coast of the United States. And, you know, out of my own personal interest, I don't have any background in social work, but out of my own interest in sustainability and social work, I founded this company called Social Arrow Foundation in the United States. And also my biggest mission is to see how technology can solve a lot of social problems. So we've done a lot of interesting work around child rescue, rehabilitation with the government of Karnataka. And now we've come up with this entire thing of ensuring that there is, you know, a transparency linked social impact tech that would help people achieve their philanthropic goals, but with evidence, you know. So that's really what so that's Social Arrow for all of you. And I founded this company about 3 years ago. It was originally an IBM co-founded company in the United States. And I'm very happy to be part of the GCNI community for running the Sustainaverse platform. Without much ado, let's get straight into the first track, which is Responsible Business Leader. And Rajiv, this is to you. Now, biggest challenge, how do we balance people and profits?
Thank you very much. These are strange times. There's fear, there is uncertainty, and it is surreal. So by force, we have been made to pause. And the challenge for the leadership is, can we make this a purposeful pause where we reconnect with the purpose of the organization and use that first to create resilience, to meet the immediate short-term problems, and to reboot, reinvent, and reignite with respect to the work that we do, the workers who do that work, and the workplace itself. Underlying what I'm going to say now is the belief that we cannot, in this new normal, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, and there's a lot of pushback by all stakeholders, you cannot have sustained business outperformance unless if, in addition to strategy, structure, processes, and metrics, you are able to show extreme care for your stakeholders, for all stakeholders, and you are able to connect and nurture and nourish the core values of the organization and of the self. It's very important in this new normal in which we have suddenly been pushed, where our entire belief and assumptions and values are being challenged, that the leader should never get into the victim syndrome, where we are dependent on others to help us solve the problems. This is the time to take responsibility. This is the time to be aware of the vast potential that exists in the people and the ecosystem in which the company operates, and use that to find solutions in the here and now. I will talk a little bit about how these words that I've just spoken could be related to nuts and bolts. I'll come to that, but I would like to suggest that there is a certain framework of leadership that would be very relevant and very useful in this new normal that I've just described, of fear, of uncertainty, of a surreal nature. The attitude of the leader and the organization must be accept no limits, do alternative thinking, and above all, drive positive change vis-a-vis all the stakeholders. Now, there are 5 leadership characteristics that would make sure, or that would help these 3 attitudes, which is accept no limits, do alternative thinking, and drive positive change, that would make these come alive. And I would like to just share them with you without going into details. If you're interested in the Q&A, you can ask me to unpack these. Number 1 is the ability in any situation to use the whole mind, where the leader and his people are able to combine the left brain of logic, intellect, and rationality with the right brain of emotion, connection, of being able to connect the dots, of being empathetic, of being imaginative. So using the whole mind to arrive at rich situations is a requirement. The second one is that the leader must be a multiplier. A multiplier of what? Of energy, of passion, of creating a sense of ownership, of creating empowerment. And how do you create such a multiplier? If you are an extreme command and control type, you become a diminisher. A multiplier is a person who is experienced, who knows things, but does not pretend to know all the answers. He focuses on asking the right questions and then co-creating the answers with his cohorts. Far from wanting to command and control, such a leader gets joy out of seeing potential being exploded, focuses on questions, co-creates the answers, and gets genuine joy in seeing 1,000 flowers bloom. The third one, which is critical in the new normal, is knowing that you cannot have innovation, and innovation is absolutely crucial, unless you know how to manage fear and leverage failure. The fourth one is being open to all possibilities by not being a prisoner of your own past, either failure or success. The ability to be fully in the here and now, we call it mindfulness. And last but not least, to be able to generate trust through authenticity, where thinking, saying, and doing are aligned. So let me quickly come back to the 3 words that I use, which is reboot, reinvent, and reignite. What do I mean by reboot? Reboot is to introspect deeply on the way we do things currently and then do them better. Reinvent means reimagine, come up with new ideas, come up with innovations in our products, in our services, in our market segments, in our systems, all the things in the ecosystem. And reignite means to dream bigger dreams, to dream the impossible dream, to raise aspirations and use them once the crisis is over, whenever that may be, to create a brave new world. So having said that, let me quickly talk about some of the nitty-gritties. How much time do I have, Shravan? I can't hear you.
You've got another 10 clear minutes, Rajiv.
Oh boy, no, I don't need that much time. I'll finish much before that. And
I will ask you a few difficult questions, and we will last 5:30 until another 10 minutes.
Oh, okay, great. So How do you then use the structure that I have just described, which is reboot, reinvent, and reignite, using the 3 attitudes of accept no limits, alternative thinking, and driving positive change, and the 5 behaviors, which I won't repeat right now. The first imperative for all organizations is cash. How do we manage the cash requirements to go over this period where for many, many companies, not all because some are getting good business, but for many companies, including in the Mahindra Group, revenue is down to 0. So how do you make sure that you survive? That means you have to look at cost because revenue is 0. And when you talk about cost, the one thing that we are not going to touch, we are not going to lay off a single person, whether permanent or temporary. That's a call that has been taken. So then we look at various elements of cost, of cash flows, whether it is operational cost, whether it is working capital, whether it is CapEx, and then do some scenario planning. What in the worst case would be our ability to sustain ourselves? How many months will we be able to sustain ourselves? And if the crisis continues beyond that, how do we still survive? And clearly, we need to be looking at what will demand look like? What will supply look like? What do we do during this purposeful pause for our employees and for the other human beings in our extended supply chain and ecosystem? Of course, their safety and well-being is critical, but also when I talk about well-being, it includes things like making sure that even food is distributed. And I know that I'm not supposed to talk about this because other members will, but I'm just mentioning that in the safety and well-being of people, it's not only our own employees that we are talking about, we are also talking about people in our supply chain, we are talking about contract labor, and we're talking about even in the extended ecosystem. But for our own employees, those who work, huge focus on capability building, on reskilling, on asking people to re-examine their mindsets and their beliefs. And I would like to mention here that going forward, complexity is going to be the name of the game. In complexity, how can we keep things simple? This in turn requires that we move away from the bureaucratic model of organization structure and hierarchies to a lot of self-managed teams, to distributed decision-making and teams, and distributed decision-making. How do we provide the psychological safety for people to take risk in this kind of a new normal and in this kind of distributed decision-making? And how do we create trust? And finally, because things are changing so much, how do we inculcate what could be called the founder's mentality? So this is what I had to say by way of a general introduction to what the core requirements of leaders and leadership will be in this new normal. And should there be lots of questions, happy to answer them. Thank you.
Yeah, so the questions will from the participants. Thank you so much, Rajiv. That was a stellar kind of a broad framework that you established for the leaders. Of course, there's going to be a lot of nuances around, depending on the size of the companies, large size, small size, SMEs, MSMEs, and their reaction vis-a-vis the broad framework that you established. Because we've also seen sort of I call it a phantom shock syndrome that has happened to a lot of smaller enterprises where they're not actually impacted by the pandemic, but they seem like they're impacted, and as a result, they've taken a series of decisions that impact people. They've gone into this phantom shock syndrome, I call it. How do you address that in an economy of India where 60% is still unorganized, and a lot of people belong to the SMEs and MSMEs? What is your advice to leaders who are, let's say, running a 50-member organization, a 100-member organization, and we've all pretty much gone through this, what I call the phantom shock syndrome, that they think they're in pain, they're in shock, and their response has been pretty sporadic and ad hoc. without even actually assessing from the broad leadership framework of response that you just mentioned?
Yeah, well, frankly, there is no silver bullet, and it would be very presumptuous of me to think that I can advise people, except to say that they should just go back and think it through and get away from the victim feeling that we often have and see what is it that we can do in this situation, very difficult situation. What is it that we can do? And focus on that. And remember that, and especially this is true for MSMEs and maybe the smaller SMEs, that when the demand comes back, which of course it will, we don't know how long that will take, you would require your workforce. Now, the fact is that for most tier 2, tier 3 and smaller companies, a lot of the workforce has left and gone back. They will have to come back. How do you create the conditions for them to come back as soon as possible when the demand opens up? What is it that we have to do to create the conditions? And this would include a lot of communication with the workers, if that's possible, because you have to get them back, and interacting with the government authorities to make sure. I mean, I'm saying this, I had a long chat with the head of the supply chain of Mahindra, and he was saying that, look, this is a real issue out here. How do we get them back? So this is the immediate thing I'd like to say. And the other thing I would like to suggest, and I know it's easy for me to say it, but the traditional view of labor has been that it's a short-term cost to be minimized. But the truth is that actually labor is one of those rare assets that can actually appreciate over time if you invest wisely in them. If you provide them with the kind of skilling, with the kind of mindsets, with the kind of involvement that you need, the benefits would far, far outweigh the costs. And I think that going forward, there has to be a fundamental shift of paradigm where labor must be looked at not as a short-term cost to be minimized, but as a long-term asset that can appreciate in value if we invest wisely in them. And I would urge our friends to please look at it. I know that the first response is, I have no money, I have no demand. What good is this advice? But the fact is that we have to come out. Yes, it's a fact that there is no demand right now. It's a fact that revenues are down to zero. It's a fact that there are huge cash problems. But governments are doing something, larger companies are trying to do something. We'll have to find a solution, but we have to depend upon ourselves and not throw up our arms and just point fingers at others. That's what I'd like to say.
Excellent, Rajiv. That's a very wise decision. I think even for SMEs and the smaller enterprises, I think the three words that you mentioned, which is basically, it can be carried in different sequences. For example, the SMEs, it could be reinvent first instead of reignite, and then followed by reignite and reboot. So during this crisis, and smaller enterprises are pretty agile to change their business operating models and look for new solutions, and for example, and find ways on how their existing workforces can be leveraged to better re-articulate an existing business model, howsoever small they are. And I think it's also pertinent to say that, SDG goal number 3, which is good health and well-being, for example, and SDG goal number 8, which is decent work, is quintessential in the longer roadmap that Rajiv just mentioned to us in the discussion. I think in the longer term, labor should not be considered as a short-term working capital line item in anybody's budget, but as a capex line item, for example, long-term human capital capex related line item in anybody's planning and budgeting, for example. I think that's a very, very futuristic insight that we just received, Rajiv. Thank you so much for that. While we will come back to some of the questions that I'm sure the participants have been asking questions already, so we'll come back with some of those questions back to you, Rajiv. Let's kind of move on to the next track in hand, which is how can the organization really respond to the needs of the community? We have some really creative ways in which Unilever had addressed those needs, and I would pass on the honors of explaining that narrative to Prasad Pradhan. Whenever you want us to show some of the slides, just go ahead and let us know, and we'll bring them onto the screen. But go ahead, Prasad. How do you think organizations can really partner with the government, number one, and also accelerate to deliver to the needs of the community in this stage while preserving their own business models and preserving their own business interests?
Thank you, Shravan. Rajiv is not there on the screen, but thank you, Rajiv, for setting it up so well. Many organizations have actually already made their commitments to the nation and to the community at large. I'm going to talk about HUL commitment and some of the initiatives that we have already taken. So if we can move to the first slide, first and foremost, travel. Right from actually January end, we were tracking this and we have put some of the countries on no travel list. And then we went on increasing that. And finally...
Prasad, 1 minute. So can we get the presentation up, please? From the admin side, please. Thank you.
You can move to the next.
Next slide. Yeah. Prasad, over to you.
Yeah. So finally, and in March, we decided that we will not, the travel will be banned. We will not travel to any country outside India, and domestic travel was also banned. This was actually before lockdown. Unilever was proactive, and Unilever globally decided that all office employees will work from home. And this was decided on March 17th. And we did bit of preparation in terms of how the processes will run, how people will work from office. People were used to working virtually, but still we needed processes. We developed an app where actually employees can update their status and their health related information, and that they are well at least couple of times in a week, and that app was shared with all the employees. We made them aware and on various protocols and precautions that need to be taken. There was regular communications through emails and newsletters, and there were virtual town halls, and which still continue even now. But the next are the kind of business that we are in essential goods or daily necessity products. So which means our factories had to run and people need to go to markets as well. So there was a protocols, standard operating procedures which were developed for our factory teams, and which included all aspects of supply chain, right from travel, product sourcing, operations, business continuity, and the protocols in operation. So in the factories were actually the best in which is the WHO protocols. Which included access control, personal protective equipment, hygiene and sanitation related protocols, social distancing, and all. And it's important really that actually we continue to produce and we continue to serve the market and communities during these challenging times. However, there was clearly disruption initially when the lockdown was announced. Many factories had to shut down, and at least for few days, 2 or 3 days, 4 days, they were actually in that state. Then the next is actually customer development, which is sales people. Again, for field people, we had clearly defined protocols, and these were actually defined on the basis of risk assessment of each market. So we had 4-tiered protocols, and depending on the risk assessment, we decided what kind, there was a clear protocols for going in that market. Then we had a weekly rotation system for managers. So people who go in the market will go in that week, and next week they will not go in the market. The other team will go in the market. So that way we were rotating people who go in the market, and there are some people work from home, and some people go in the office. And we are very proud that during this very challenging time, our supply chain colleagues and sales teams are there right at the front end and doing their job very well. So that's on CD and supply chain. Then the next year is actually outer core. So Unilever made a commitment that it will protect its workforce from sudden drops in pay and as a result of market disruptions. And we said that we will protect their pay for 3 months, and that commitment was made. And you see some of the people here who depend on us, tricycle vendor, ice cream vendor who sells ice cream. So clearly he's not able to go out, but still his income is protected. You see factory workers, they diligently, go in the factories, and yes, there is absenteeism, but our factories are running. At least 60-70% of our factories are running. And then there is people, you see the lady going in the market and taking the orders. So that's on our people who directly work with us and some of the people who are indirectly work with us. Let's move to the next slide. The next is actually so in terms of our communities, it was important to act with speed. And therefore, the best EA was actually our products. And we have, great products which are actually fight against coronavirus. And you see Lifebuoy there, Lifebuoy soap, Lifebuoy hand wash liquid, sanitizers, Domex floor cleaner and disinfectant, which actually is the only disinfectant which has sodium hypochlorite, which is bleach, which is recommended for coronavirus, and then Red Label Tea and Horlicks. So clearly we made sure there were product donations, which we started on a massive way. It started with actually the hospitals. So first and foremost, the two big hospitals in Mumbai, which is actually the Kasturba Gandhi Hospital, we sent Lifebuoy soaps and Domex floor cleaners to them. Seven Hills Hospital, people who were actually came to India and who were actually quarantined for some time. Food packets and hygiene packets were sent. 5 hospitals in Mumbai, in Pune, which were housing COVID-19 patients, they were sent Domex, Lifebuoy and other stocks. And similarly, Pimpri-Chinchwad area was a hotspot which was coming up. We sent it there also. Similarly, in Delhi, West Bengal, and many other places like Nagpur, Yavatmal, and even in Uttar Pradesh. Now, it was important that as we were seeing this issue develop, we were seeing this issue of migrant labor. And our factories, we have a big program called Prabhat, which is actually driven by our factory team. And we have about 28 factories. And already they were seeing pressure there with regard to migrant laborers. We decided that actually it's important to actually provide them food and essentials if you don't want them to move out. And that program now actually in the next 3 months, we want to take it to many more people. So almost 1 lakh people, migrant people will be covered and their families through this program. And through the local communities, we will actually donate almost, 5 lakh to about 5 lakh families, which will be covered through Lifebuoy soaps and, some of the food items, etc. The third thing was actually the medical infrastructure and medical infrastructure. So medical infrastructure, it's important to upgrade some of the medical infrastructure that we have in our country, and particularly the interior areas. So we reached out to Public Health Department, Government of Maharashtra, and they recommended that in the interior Maharashtra, there would be government hospitals which need that upgrade. So we've already placed order for, ventilators and personal protective equipment, etc. and other things. And next week, actually, it should be landing. Similarly, wherever we have factories, there are government hospitals, small government hospitals, they needed this support. And we have taken that on board, and we are providing them with, again, the ventilators and some of the other personal protective equipment, etc. The other area is actually isolation facilities, and hospitals and the beds are very limited, and there will be enormous pressure on these facilities. So we tied up with Apollo Hospital, Lemon Tree, and Oyo to create isolation facilities. And in the first stage, they are creating it in 4 cities, Mumbai, Chennai, Bangalore, and Delhi. and Calcutta will also come up, and 500 rooms will be created, and these patients who will be there will be provided medical advice through telemedicine, which is with Apollo Hospital initiative, and they will also get food there. So these are some of the initiatives that we have taken, and the next big area actually we said that it's important to create awareness. And so can we move to the next slide? Yes, so Lifebuoy came out with the campaign on hand washing with soap, and this is actually in this campaign we say that it's not only Lifebuoy, but you can use any soap, which is whether it is Dettol or any other soap, but it's important to wash hands with soap at least for 20 seconds. So this campaign was launched. The second campaign was actually which was launched just yesterday in partnership with UNICEF, which is actually on stay safe from coronavirus, and which is actually break the chain and virus ki kadi todo. So which is actually stay at home, and then hand washing with soap, and then be generous in actually donating, because it's important to also raise money for this cause. And I'm going to show you this campaign. HUL actually almost 15 days back, we committed 100 crores for this cause. And there are some initiatives which are included in this, some initiatives are outside this, but the company is completely committed. And even today, when there was a news about Dharavi, we were actually trying to, tomorrow we will be sending Lifebuoy soaps, Domex, floor cleaners, etc. to distribution at Dharavi to those communities. So can we move to I just wanted to show you one campaign which was developed along with UNICEF. Through UNICEF, we will also distribute almost 2 crore Lifebuoy soaps in the interior areas to the community which needs it the most, such as Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, etc. Can we see the campaign, please?
I think the volume is less, or it's not very clear, I think. Are you able to get the volumes up, Rashika, and the CNI team?
I'm sorry that volume was not clear. So I urge all of you to check out this campaign separately.
Yeah, Prasad,
thank you, Shravan.
We will have the link uploaded with the video as well for everybody to take a look. So Prasad, thank you so much. And there seems to be impeccable amount of operational response from Hindustan Unilever, and that I think it's a reason for great applause. It's not in the boardrooms, but I think you've actually gone ahead and delivered in multiple tracks across the board, public-private partnership, everything operationalized and put into effect, which is wonderful, because that's really the need of the hour. And I think salute the resolve of giving this a more practical and operational response during the time of a crisis. So our congratulations to you. How do you see this panning out if, let's say, this stretched for another 6 months? How do you think Hindustan Unilever would continue to sustain providing these relief materials?
Yeah, I couldn't hear you clearly. There was a lot of disturbance in my, actually mic. I didn't get your question. We will come back to the question later, maybe.
Sure. Perfect. So thank you so much, Prasad ji, for that. Let's move on to the next track that we have, which is, this is in relation to a programmatic response. How can CSR respond to this in a programmatic way? And the solutions for business continuity seen from the eyes or perspective of sustainability, and directly related to goal number 3, SDG goal number 3 and SDG goal number 8. Over to Madhulika Sharma for her narrative, please.
Thanks, Shravan. So I'll just request to put on my slide number 1. And while it is being done, so I just go back to what was how you introduced that the whole, the business continuity plan for, especially for, organizations which is large manufacturing setup, like steel sector, have been on, something which is happening in the operations. So we have a lot of, hot gases and things like that, or even, maybe a strike or something like that. But never, I think it never crossed, even 2 months ago, we were doing a risk and opportunity, review at the highest level in the organization, and it did not feature in the risk register. I mean, the top risk register. The pandemic never featured there. And, so first of all, it was kind of, as Mr. Rajiv Dubey said, it was a start of a surreal kind of thing playing out. And it was a kind of disbelief that it is not going to touch us, So Jharkhand was one of the last states to get cases. But however, I'll say that it was leadership which actually had the vision to see that what is the potential actually to disrupt the business, not only in terms of financials, but actually in terms of many other things like, taking care of the whole ecosystem. Because as you know, Jamshedpur is a steel town. The whole town revolves around the steel company. And we do have sites now at Kalinganagar, and we have acquisition. So I think sometime in the second week of March, already the business continued. There was a task force formed at the most senior level, and there were talks on actually recalibrating the business continuity plan, and things like work from home, how will it be, how will it pan out, and technology, whether it is going to support or not. And then the differentiation on who is in essential service and who is not. All that, I think, happened much before actually the lockdown was announced. And we still were under the impression that yes, we would be continuing, and at least some of the people would be coming, and it will not be a total lockdown. But I think it was from third week of March that it was a full lockdown, and most of us started the work from home. So I don't see my slide on the screen.
Ashika, can you please, the admin, please pull up these slides? Yeah, thank you.
So I think that is where the whole preparation for doing the business continuity plan much earlier helped. Because in a steel company, as I said, the health and safety, there would still be some people who are coming to the plant, and it is not actually some people. We have the approval from the district administration. When I'm talking about numbers of Jamshedpur largely, because that's our largest operating site with a 10 million ton plant. The Odisha site is a 3 million ton, and the other site in Odisha is about 4 million ton. Actually, we had the approvals, so all the liaising with the admin, etc., had happened. I think there was a talk with the highest level in the country that how does, so that everyone across had the same understanding about how does the steel sector and the, ancillaries associated with steel sector, how are they going to be dealt with. But it was actually, it's very important to actually, how do we operationalize the business continuity plan. This was about, so first and foremost is the ensuring the health and safety of the people who are actually coming. And while we have about approval for about 27,000 people, including contract workers, to come, we have tried to limit it to about 20,000, but that's again a big lot of people who are coming. And there are a lot of, so a 10 million ton steel plant has about 30 million ton of raw material coming and about 30 million ton of output material that gets out. So that's the quantum of, or that's the scale of things which happen. So there are a lot of people who are coming from outside, and at least till the entire everything had locked down. So there were a lot of people who came from outside. So we quickly had SOPs, and we now, I mean, it's operationalized. So maybe first week there were some hitches, but I think now it's a kind of way of working where the thermal screening of anyone who's coming from outside, whom we don't know about, whose history we don't know about, they are all getting screened. So the numbers which you see on the screen, they are at the end of March numbers. So about more than 11,000 thermal screenings would have happened, and anyone who is a suspect based on the screening is then is sent for the medical checkup. And every day on a normal about 300 medical checkups are happening inside our plant medical. Of course, things like putting sanitization and doing daily sanitization of control rooms, toilets, common areas, and then quickly understanding what is the standard for sanitization and which chemical to use, ensuring the supply chain. So there's a lot of work which has happened on supporting the community and working with the government. I think the area has one big hospital, which is the Tata Main Hospital. We quickly actually isolation wards have been set up in liaison with government, and that's one on the readiness part, so that it is there. And there's a lot of communications which is happening, so that because people really don't know, so they are updated through various mass mailers. So we get mass mailers at the end of the day, and then all posters at each entrance of the everything is tried to be communicated. On the human side, because we have to ensure and as to see that there's a human side of the whole pandemic, because while some people can afford, but we have a lot of people who actually are they have been challenged during this thing. So for example, our Kalinganagar plant, we do not have housing for everyone there. So we took all the hotels and guest houses whichever were nearby, and people who had to come, who were part of essential services, we arranged accommodation for them, and so that food was also served. Then even counseling sessions, like people who were coming, they were thinking they are ostracized, or they are the lot who are coming. So to manage the mental health of these people who are coming, I think that also started happening. Though just to tell that we have not been doing all these things. This is not the normal set of things. But as I said, after first week, we are now into third week. I think I'm part of the discussions which happen every day on the subject, and now I think people have kind of think that this is the regular thing, and now reviews are happening on these numbers. So the other thing is ensuring about the productivity and how do we utilize the time for upskilling. So one thing that has been said is most of the departments or the functions, we have our daily reviews, and we have very clear-cut assigned responsibilities. And these reviews start from the managing director. He does a review with his direct reports at 9:30. Then so my boss does after this. We do a review, and I think there are a series of reviews which happen in the whole day. And I personally see there's a lot of improvement in the productivity, because suddenly everyone is available, and if you don't have to actually book a time for meeting someone, because everyone is available and everyone is ready to cooperate. And a lot of I think this time is being used, and this is again a leadership thing, that there are a lot of knowledge management sessions which are happening. I'll probably share some numbers in my next slide on how IT is helping us, but we are using this time, and I personally would have attended, I think, more than 10 KM sessions on subjects which I always wanted to learn about, but I was not finding time to actually go through it on my own. And then we have these KM sessions between 3 to 4 every day. And so I think that's how we are kind of reigniting ourselves. So this will help us to reboot, just what Mr. Rajiv Dubey said, when the time is there to come. I'll just request to go on my next slide, which is
Madhulika, just to remind you, we've got about another 5 minutes in the scheme of things. So if you
Yeah.
could.
So as I said, but all of this, really required a IT infrastructure and IT thing to help. So luckily for us, we had a program running before this where, everything has now been moved on cloud, and it's almost a democratization of any system. So we are, as user, we are oblivious on which platform it is running, because most of it is now, front-ended either through a mobile app or anything. And just to give some numbers, it is on the screen for everyone, but about 14,000 plus people are working in India on work from home, and about 50 terabytes of data has been pumped in March itself. And every day there are some 2,000 plus online meetings, and the peak number is about 3,500 participants. And there are about, for people who are working in plant, they can actually see all these data, all the control room data. They get mirrored on their mobile apps or any devices that they are using. So that's on the IT. I'll just request to go on the next slide, which is, so this was all about business, but we have a very rich legacy of our community connect. And how did we react to it? So this is one very unique thing which has come. It was mentioned that it is also important to take care of the community. So we came out we actually have a very big kitchen in Jamshedpur, which serves the midday meal scheme of the government. But with the schools closed, but with the infrastructure available, we have started this initiative of Thought for Food, and we have served, in Jamshedpur itself, more than 50,000 meals have been served to people who actually, and one wholesome meal a day. And what has also is there that this program, you can contribute. An employee can contribute, anyone else can contribute. And there have been, so this is also like as an individual, if you want to contribute, you cannot really go out. Then this is a forum or a platform which can be used. And it started with Jamshedpur, has actually gone to all the locations. So this was how the strength of CSR, it was, used to actually deliver a thing that is needed in these times. I'll just go to the next slide, request to go to the next slide, which is on some more initiatives which really help. So we have a big outreach. So the digital bridges were connected with all the Gram Panchayats. One, to actually tell them about the true information about the COVID, and also to have a system. So there were some complaints which they did not know where to reach about, some people still going out. So they reached us to us, and then we informed the local admin, it was taken care. We have the self-help groups that we have has been utilized to, ramp up to, they can supply 75,000 masks. Till now, I think about 20,000 have already been supplied. We have been able to, this is a very good initiative, which I am a personal beneficiary, which is from the farm. More than 2,500 kgs of fresh farm products, because we have farmers in our CSR area who were not able to sell their products because, the police would stop them, and they did not have a voice with the admin to actually say that they can come to the marketplace. So we have actually collaborated with Zomato Market, and this is now reaching at a very reasonable price. And I'm a personal user of this particular thing. So it is mix of technology, it is mix of collaboration with the third party, and ensuring that the the beneficiaries, true beneficiaries, are getting benefited. Then the other one is the Farishta, which is again with people having some time, and they can actually do volunteering. So this is a digital volunteering where you can get connected to. We run schools, so there are residential schools, there are rehab schools, so you can actually adopt some set of students and get connected with them either daily, weekly, whatever is the. So these are some of the things which our CSR team actually tweaked to actually react to this event which has happened. I will stop here now, and I would probably take questions during the Q&A session. There's much more to tell, but I know there's a time possibility.
No, yeah, thank you so much, Madhulika, for sticking to the time. Of course, the looking at that one slide where you have actually outlined the movement from the business as usual to a technology-led response is just mind-boggling. I think for an organization of that scale to move to online mode of working where in a factory-like setting, it's much more easier in an IT and ITES company kind of setting. But then in a factory-like setting, trying to take control of all of these systems remotely is a huge case study. I would think, it'll be a pleasure to actually take that as a case study and take that into a knowledge repository in Global Compact Network India and Sustainiverse.
Yeah, so we have, before this, we were actually running with the agility program where we wanted to, we are 110, more than 112 years old company. So there are bureaucratic setups, especially in Jamshedpur, and we were trying to see how to, get over it. So that a program was being run for that. And I think the whole event actually has, we can really reinvent ourselves to see that how the entire setup has been broken. And it's about what Mr. Rajiv Dubey said, it's about Teams. And we have rediscovered MS Teams. So it's such a great platform to connect with everyone. So I think that's one big learning, yes, and it could be a case study.
Excellent, Madhulika, thank you so much. And also sort of a positive note, I read a news article this morning in Financial Express that says one of your competing steel companies, I don't want to name them here, is actually trying to cope with the spike in orders, because most of the steel factories out there in Europe and US are actually shut for temporarily. And it's a miracle that your Jamshedpur plant is actually still working in an optimal or more than optimal manner. So I think there's a lot of spike in export orders is what I hear from a steel industry perspective. So congratulations in a way for all the great CSR work. I think it's kind of getting balanced by more orders and stuff like that. So let me just move on to the next track, which is really the increasing role of technology. And of course, everyone's talking about technology. It's really communication technology that we're seeing right now. We're not there yet in terms of technology for vaccines. And I think that's a big question mark that's going through, ripping across all the governments, all the bureaucracies, all the big companies, all the research institutions, that technology for medicine versus technology of communication. Of course, technology of communication is all over the place. So over to you, Roma. What's your response? What's your viewpoints around technology in the face of adversities?
Thanks, Shravan. I think I've been hearing a lot about all the good work that the corporates have come together. They've united and come together, but it has brought the world to a halt. But at the same time, it makes me introspect that does hunger come to a stop? Hunger does not come to a stop. So if you could put my first slide on, and I'd like to connect with what I've said in the slide. It was the time when we heard about this. The first thing that our chairman initiated at that point in time was to tell us that livelihood becomes a key area, and we must look at how we can support livelihood. And livelihood is not just about doing it only for the communities that you are in or you're working in, but for the daily wage worker. So what we did very quickly and agile, because as I mentioned earlier to you, that we always use telepresence because we are in remote areas. We are a natural resources company spread across, and telepresence has been the way we do our business. So then it was easier to just really move into the situation where you had to get into the home front and work out of home. So telepresence really morphed into using all the latest technology. So our digital experts were all there to help us really transition very quickly there. And we were very clear in which areas that we are going to work in and how we are going to communicate that. So leveraging technology has been a boon for us because that's a way of life for doing business. And that has really gone into now working from home. What is the technology? Like Madhulika mentioned, cloud-based technology has always been the way we work. We've already had the chairman's app, which has been working very well. So all the technology that we had put into good use for over the years and done business has really helped us today. Will you take it to the next slide, please? And we were very clear that when this happened, the first thing was the humane part of it, the compassion part of it. So where do we look at ourselves as a caring corporate citizen? So livelihood for daily wage workers, and also the bezuban. I mean, who are the bezuban? The stray animals. We needed to feed them. So that was one part that we wanted to work on. And yes, in our far-flung areas, we were very quick, nimble, agile to work with the district administration. And all what Madhulika said and all what the former panelists have said, that's all that we all came together and did. But beyond that, there are employees. You have to look at the safety of those employees. You have to look at the contract workers. So we quickly understood that this is going to throw up challenges. What are the challenges? The challenges of mental health. How do you address mental health at this point in time? So I think that's where we sprung into action. So our 3 cells which came forward to work, one was for the community, one was to see what our locations had in terms of the requirements, and of course the business continuity that we all talked about. But more important is today that what is it that we need to do and leverage technology. That is what our digital strategists are working non-stop. We are across the locations. We are looking at how safety is to be done because like Tata Steel, we are also an essential services. We serve the nation. Our entire brand campaign is Desh ki Zaruraton ke liye. And here we were put to test for that. And here we are today all talking about the uncertainties and seeing what it's going to be life after the lockdown is also lifted. So those are the business continuity plans. There is always a necessity for technology to help because you're going to be closing the year. The financial year is going to close. How do you leverage technology for that? So all our teams are working very, very closely to understand and implement. So technology is a clear-cut enabler to seamlessly communicate both with all our stakeholders, whether it's government, whether it's regulators, whether it is public, whether it's employees. If you take the next slide, I would like to just share a few things that we have done. Very importantly, what we did, apart from the call to action by the government, we have all looked at volunteering, and we have asked every employee do adopt 2 families, look after them. They will be a daily wage worker. And how do you enable them? So we've used a digital platform. We are trying to reach out to as many that we can. Can you take us to the next slide? Yeah, so this is where we are. We are across, like many of you all said, Meals for All. That's something we have done. Getting the right equipment for health, that's something which we have certainly started and we are looking at it. We have set up isolation wards in readiness in all the Vedanta hospitals across and the community centers. And our marquee project, which is Nandgarh, all of our volunteers are just walking into those communities across the 1400 Nandgarhs, sitting with the children, talking to those young kids, making them feel alive again because they're missing the surroundings of the Anganwadis. They're missing that fun and frolic over there. And we are just making sure that there is no panic. There is humanity. There is a sense of belonging. There's a feeling that we are all in it together. We don't know what the next steps are going to be, but business continuity will always work side by side. Like Rajiv mentioned, we have to have a new, set of leadership traits that will come out. But I think we will emerge stronger. I think that's very important for us to appreciate the new normal and how do we address that. I think we have all come together in this fight against COVID-19. And I would certainly request you all to just show my little video, which is now with you all. It's all about the unsung heroes. It's all about the employees. We have run a 24/7 mental health helpline that will help people along with Apollo Hospital. Somebody mentioned Apollo. I think we've all done it together. It's the power of collaboration. It's the power of coming together. India has taken a lead in this. I think our government has been ahead of the curve. I think we've taken all precautions that are available. We have been importing the right kind of equipment. I think what's important is the unity that everybody has shown. And I think Vedanta has really brought this forward and proved themselves on Desh ki Zaruraton ke liye, because we have to keep our plants open. We have to make sure that they are running. We have to take care of the safety of our people. We have to ensure that they are looking after themselves, their families, and following the WHO standards when they come to work. I'll take a small example of Cairn Oil and Gas. Now, Cairn Oil and Gas has to produce oil. It has to be transported. It is an essential commodity. And that is something that we feel that our project Nirman, which is to do with connectivity, to go that last mile, to have drones and automation working. I think those are the technological advancements that we as an organization have taken and innovatively taken at the right time. And now it's coming to use. I think I'll stop over there because time is running out, but I'd love to answer any of the questions which you have. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Roma. It's a pleasure to see the magnitude at which Vedanta is actually pledged to the meals. That's significant need of the hour operationally from a community response perspective, and we can congratulate you for that. Before I go to the question and answers that I've got like very, a cross section of questions to different panelists, and I'm cognizant of the fact that we're running out of time as well. But I want to just, precede the questions with a set of positives that I want to share with you. First of all, in comparison with all statistical sort of parameters that are emerging from different other countries, I think India is doing spectacularly well. And that is something that's not celebrated. When you go to a Google search and search for news, you'll only see kinds of news that are erring on the negative. Unfortunately, they're not on the positive. So from that perspective, I would like to share that. Am I audible to everyone, please?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. So I'm saying that I think it's about time for us also to look at the magnitude of positive news and set that off against the set of negative news that is coming out, and perspective of the India's own COVID-19 proactive response. I think it's about time for us all to celebrate the community's resolve to fight this and stop it at the doorstep. And I think we've never let it come into our house, is the way that I would like to pronounce this. And I'm very proud to pronounce this, in this webinar. And I think it's about time for us as a collective conscious. Rajiv was talking about mindfulness, and I think the entire Indian sort of community should be mindful of the fact that we have made a conscious attempt to stop COVID-19 at our doorstep, instead of let it sort of conflagrate over the community across the length and breadth. Without wasting much time, and with that positive note, I also want to add to the fact that Sustainiverse is going to continue hosting a lot of very interesting webinars. We might also have quite a few learning sessions. We put Sustainiverse web platform in record amount of time. Thanks for all the support that we received from GCNI as well. So, just want to let you know that there's also going to be a lot of learning on specific topics related to sustainability, about impact measurement, about standards that various programs can use, and so on and so forth. And all of that would be housed within the Asia Pacific Resources Center within GCNI. Now let me move to questions, and Rajiv I saw his hand going up, so I'll come back to you, Rajiv. There are a few questions a lot of interesting questions though. Let me go with the first question that's coming on. Also, interestingly, we've got a lot of participants from across the globe. Like Kamal Singh said, we've participants from UAE, from Australia, from Sri Lanka as well, and from other parts of the Middle East. And we will give you more statistics about the diversity of audience later on. We'll put that up on the site as well. Let me start with a few questions. First, bucketed them to the best possible extent. This is coming from Sophia Joseph, and the question really is new change and new skills, how to take all staff together. There is no time for training and skill building like multitasking or self-managing. What's the suggestion for a rapid capacity building of teams? And this goes to Rajiv.
Sorry. 1 second. Can you unmute me?
No, we can hear you, sir.
You can hear me. Okay.
Live, yes.
So I think the only answer I can give is to humongously use technology. This is the time when people are actually have time and use technology, because that's the best way to do it, and this is the best time to do it. So I would say use technology and do all the work that you want to do right now.
Sure. Another question coming from Viti Lamba from Dubai, and her question again to Rajiv is, where and how should we draw a line between humanity versus economic choices from a business perspective during this COVID-19 situation?
Yeah.
Where do we draw the line?
Yeah. So it's a very difficult question to answer. I think each organization and each person will have to find his or her own answer. But I would like to suggest that we often get trapped in the tyranny of either or, whereas actually we have to move to the power of and. So it's not about humanity versus economic gain or profit. The two have to go together. And I think that's the huge paradigm shift which has already started happening. And I think we will see more and more of that. These are not either or, both have to go hand in hand. And the choice that organizations and individuals will have to make is where in that spectrum between the either or do we want to be at any particular point in time, or be as a matter of principle and values. But both have to exist. And as I said, it is not possible to have sustained business outperformance unless we are simultaneously showing extreme care for all stakeholders, not only shareholders. And also we are able to nurture and nourish our core values. So all these have to exist together. And the difference only would be where in the spectrum do individuals and organizations decide to sort of be. And this could well be the main thing which determines the longevity and the sustainability and the competitiveness and the passion required to create that competitiveness, etc., etc. So thank you for the question.
Thanks, Rajiv. This is more of a practical question coming from Dr. Ankur Bhatnagar from Uttarakhand. He's asking, this question is more to Mr. Prasad. His question is, this gentleman works for a listed company, but he also runs his own NGO. And he needs a support for providing a lot of soaps to distribute in the rural habitat of his location. Now, I think the larger theme here of this question is not just about how do we address local needs in different pockets. Now, there isn't, no, where is the, is there a collective central information repository of all these needs getting populated? How can corporates address this? Now, each and every corporate is doing certain immediate, community response in their own pockets. But then, is there a national repository of requirements that are populated so corporates can then address them at their own regional levels or local levels, for example? Prasad, over to you.
So I think, like I gave an example of our 28 factories and 10 or 15 distribution centers, each one is playing a role, and that is by actually providing hygiene products and also providing or helping those people who are in need of food. So, and this will continue. So therefore, actually, and for example, take for example Uttarakhand. We have a factory at Haridwar, and Haridwar factory is actually Hindustan Unilever there for the local people. So already steps have been taken, and we all I mean, if all the corporates and people are, every corporate is actually doing it, but I think we need to be more, whatever the local community needs and whatever the issues are arising, we need to address them there. So yes, certainly if he has any specific suggestions, we'll be happy to work with him. I'll put him in touch with our local factory, and we will be very happy to work with his team.
Sure, Prasad. And also as a collective team, taking a cue from that question, does this group feel that there is a need for a national CSR response portal, at least for demand aggregation, if not for fulfillment? So if you look at the supply chain design, for example, of any company for that matter, relief has to be commoditized. And right now there isn't a demand aggregation that is happening at a national level. Now, what does the group think from that perspective of creating a national portal for demand aggregation of relief and then allocation of resources by various companies, both government and non-governmental.
Absolutely, this is possibly something GCNI can also consider, because you can actually take those requests, you can actually identify those needs.
Sure. Put them into various buckets and so on and so forth. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, but I would caution against GCNI trying to do anything other than providing a platform. It's too complex for the GCNI to actually start filtering and doing allocations, because I have worked with these platforms in the context of the CII, and I think it is much better just to create the platform and where you can connect supply and demand, and leave it to bilateral and trilateral relationships to function there, rather than somebody trying to act as a central administrator. It just becomes too complex in practical life. Yeah.
Thank you, Rajiv. I think the goal of GCNI should be that of an enabler or of a platform where all of both sides of supply and demand can talk to each other, and then create a repository of self-service rather than of being the actual service provider in any ways. Moving to another question that I've received from Rajiv Gulati. This is again, this is a very interesting question, because it talks about how can we skill paramedical staff next door. Now, I think it's becoming the pandemic is putting a lot of pressure on the medical services professionals. Now, how can there be a digital movement of government and other agencies to upskill rapidly people who are in your neighborhood to become paramedical staff? I think it's a very, very interesting question, and I don't know how. I think each one of you, I think maybe Roma can go with answering this, or for example, Madhulika can also attempt.
I'm not sure whether I'll be able to take that question. Maybe Madhulika can stab at it.
So yeah, it's very interesting. Actually, one of the things that we have a capability development center, which is quite, it runs a skilling program for government also. And what they have utilized this event is to actually quickly, convert the classrooms into smart classes, and also have e-learning modules. But of course, we have not, I'm just remembering the list. It was more on trade and technical trades, things like that. It is interesting to actually include something like paramedic kind of a thing. But I just because I did not share everything which I got from our CSR team, but one of the things which was also done is to actually equip our Sahyas. So we also run programs with government or with the Sahyas who are there, the village in the villages, and to equip them with the basic knowledge about COVID and how to react in case they see a suspect. So I think that part has happened as part of our CSR, but of course it's in our reach area. But I think it's an excellent suggestion to actually use the platforms that we have already had and we are already utilizing to do distant learning. Maybe it is a suggestion which I can give to both our capability development and our CSR team.
Thank you so much, Madhulika. And I think that's a very relevant question, because I think we might need capacity if situation runs out of control from the currently under control kind of positive nuances that we are seeing from a practical standpoint. So it's about time for us to start building that thought process to create capacity, as opposed to being on a reactive mode. And as we've seen in some of the countries where there is intense pressure on the medical support services systems. Also, another very interesting question, and this I think could be my last question for this session, and I'll put this to Rajiv. This is coming from Dr. Hanumantu Purushottam. He's the Chairman and Managing Director of National Research and Development Corporation, Government of India. His question is really about, it's obvious that the next 2 quarters is going to be pretty challenging from anybody's profit and loss and income statements of any company, listed or otherwise. How would CEOs, being in their pedestal of that role, balance their personal reputation versus creating and addressing the organizational priorities and ensuring that there is uniformity in the business operations, or uniformity in the people practices, or uniformity in the business practice? How do they balance it out as a leader? Because that's the central theme of this conversation we are having in this webinar.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously a very difficult question, but my answer is very straightforward, that the personal bit has to take a back seat, and it's the organization and the nation's requirements that have to be in the forefront. And in fact, if that is done well, then the personal reputation also gets enhanced. But if the starting point and the focus is the personal reputation, that's a recipe for disaster.
Sure, thank you so much for that. I think we probably have a clockwork finish at 6:31 p.m. Indian Standard, and I really want to thank you all for participating in this. Just to remind all the participants of this webinar, the entire session is going to be available for people to come back and take a look, or refer other friends and colleagues to take a look at it. There's going to be more and more webinars. There's going to be webinars on specialized topics. We're getting the experts from GCNI to host these webinars in Sustainiverse. And I think what's coming out centrally is from the perspective of SDGs and preserving specific SDGs. There cannot be a better time for us to resolve us and our company's priorities and philosophies around the 10 global principles that the United Nations Global Compact has set. And we would encourage each one of you to kind of align the COVID-19 response to the Sustainable Development Goals as well, in relation to individual response styles and specific operational goals that each companies would have. I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank all the panelists. I'd like to thank GCNI for giving me the opportunity to moderate the session, and feel free to give more suggestions to make these interactions more lively the next time. And we do apologize for a glitch that happened to the audio clip being played for Prasad's video, from a Unilever perspective. I think we'll hopefully solve those nuances in the next time. Yeah, we're all learning from the pandemic. Thank you, everyone, and till we meet again.